Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today's episode is a great one for parents or teachers or school administrators to tune into. You're going to learn about the phone-free schools movement through a conversation with one of the founders, Kim Whitman. Kim and I talk about the reasons why phones are getting banned in schools across the country. What is the pushback? We even touch on school-issued devices. And in the episode notes, I have linked to the Phone-Free Schools Administrators Toolkit, which was created in partnership with Fair Play and is an incredible resource for parents or schools or anyone interested in learning how to successfully implement a bell-to-bell phone ban and why that is important for kids' development and education. This episode is sponsored by Bark Technologies. If you are like me and worried about your child's safety online or focus in the classroom and want to keep them safe, please consider the Bark phone. It was specifically designed for kids, unlike iPhones, and can grow with them as more access is needed over time. Now onto my chat with Kim Whitman. But let's just get right into it. And I want to ask you first, do phones belong in school?
Absolutely not. Phones have become an unnecessary disruption and distraction, not only to the academic, to the classroom, but to the entire school day. So it's obvious that they do disrupt and distract us from learning and focus, but they also distract and disrupt social emotional development. So kids having face-to-face conversations and interacting with each other, it really rifles that, and that's just as important as academic development. Phones can also disrupt the development of foundational skills like critical thinking. So if kids can get a hold of their parents at any time they want, they're not forced to think through situations that they encounter during the day and develop those skills needed.
And critical thinking related to figuring out the answer to a problem in class. So a lot of kids, and I hear this from teachers, they don't understand why they need to think about it because they have Google. They can just look it up.
Right. It's the easy route, right? But we need to establish some foundational skills prior to utilizing those tools.
Even as adults, I think we can continue using our critical thinking skills instead of looking it up. I try.
Absolutely. And we set those examples, right? We model it for our children every day.
So you mentioned lack of focus. You mentioned critical thinking skills. What about the cyberbullying that's happening through phones, having phones at school? What are you seeing around that?
Yes, it's running rampant, and the phone is the easiest way to achieve that. And, districts can monitor devices that they provide, the district provided devices, but they have no way to monitor personal cell phones. So we have heard in schools anywhere from 75 up to 90% of their discipline referrals come from phones and social media, which are a common way to cyberbully others.
Yeah, cyberbully other students and teachers even, right? Hearing about taking photos of teachers or creating fake profiles of teachers and cyberbullying them.
Right. We have a teacher in my children's district that said that she is fearful to go use the restroom during the school day. She's worried that it will be videoed and posted to social media. And no teacher should have to think about that.
Holy crap. I've never heard that one before. That's really sad.
It is.
And then one thing that I hear a lot about is just the student-teacher relationship and the issue around having to enforce, even whatever the phone ban looks like, the teacher having to be the one to tell the kids to put away. Their favorite thing that exists in the whole world is that phone. That's one thing that's causing a lot of issues in respect and between teacher and student, also teacher morale and retention. Are you seeing anything around that?
Yes, absolutely. We've put so much on the backs of teachers, and policing phones is unneeded. It should be handled at the administrative level, building wide, instead of putting that pressure on teachers. We have seen in schools that have an all-day phone-free policy that utilize a storage device that teacher retention improves in those schools. And I agree with you on the tension that can produce if a teacher is having to repeatedly tell a student, or even once, they don't want that to be the first interaction, a negative interaction with a student. I just spoke with a dean of students here in Kansas City who said they implemented a phone-free policy and they have phone lockers for phones, but smartwatches and AirPods have to be stored in their backpack. And he said he walked in a room and there were students wearing their smartwatch still. And the teachers, they just don't want to understandably engage in that negative conversation. And who knows where it will lead. I will even take it to the other side. If you're a parent who wants your school to be phone free, it's really hard to approach teachers because, again, you're approaching them with a negative scenario that could create tension, and that's not the goal. And that's why it's just best if the phone policy is from the top down and is building wide.
Right. Okay. And we'll get to what the ideal way to keep phones and devices away from kids. But I'm wondering, when thinking about developing the phone policy for the school, what devices need to be included?
Right. Our definition does include anything that connect to the internet or connect to other people. So it's not just smartphones, it's a talk text only phone, it's smartwatches, it's AirPods, any electronic tablet that is not issued by the district.
Okay. Yeah. And that's really important because kids are with these watches. I don't think you can get on social media per se. They have cameras. You can take photos of people or yourself, selfie cameras. They can communicate with anyone at school or at home. And so just as much of a distraction. From what I hear, parents are giving kids those watches younger and younger, like 5, 6 years old or younger than that.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say, that I've talked to elementary teachers and they say the watches are the worst because in elementary, that's usually what they're starting with. And the watches just distract, even for the students that don't have the watch. If there's students around them that do it, it disrupts the whole classroom.
Wow. Yeah. Let's talk about the pushback first to just a phone policy in general, and then we'll get into like the varying ways that schools are approaching this. I have some thoughts too, but what are the biggest reasons parents would push back on these policies?
The two reasons we hear most are, one, they want 24/7 access to their child, and two, in case of an emergency at the school, a crisis situation at the school, which I'll address that one first. I know you've had other people speak on your podcast, but national security experts are very clear that students aren't safer with phones. And if you just play out the scenario in your head, I know it's really hard for parents to get past that emotional gut reaction that when something like that were to happen, they would want to be able to reach out to their child and make sure they're safe.
Right.
But if you picture a classroom with a teacher who has been trained for this situation and you have 25 children on their phones, then of course they're going to be distracted and not listening to their instruction. Also, if you're in a hiding situation and those phones light up or ding, they will be spotted and found quicker. And another reason is first responders can't get through. If there's hundreds of students on the phone with parents or 911, then first responders can't do their job.
Yeah. Thank you for laying that out. It's really important for parents to think it through and not just blindly say, well, my kid is safer in that situation. I need to know that they're safe. But by giving them the phone to keep them safe, you're actually making them more unsafe. And in reality,
it's an emotional safety blanket, but it's not really achieving the desired goal.
Right, 100%. And then there is pushback I've heard from parents like, that's my property, you're not taking away my property. And that is an interesting one, right?
Yes. I don't think anybody's taking it away. They're just storing it in a safe place for the day, right? Is the goal. I liken it to fidget spinners or whatever, a stuffed animal of some sort that was popular, right? The teachers were able to remove those from the students in the classroom environment because they were disruptive. So how is a phone or a watch any different?
Right. Agree. And I came across one, it was just one, I think it was a therapist, her profile. She was lamenting with the students saying that taking away your phones in school is actually a violation of your rights and that you have a right to access your belongings at any time. And you should speak up for that, trying to kind of bring together students to speak up against phone bans. Do you have any thoughts about that?
That is very sad and misinformed. It makes me really sad to hear that because they have influence, obviously, if they're in that position. The school has the right to educate our children in a safe and conducive environment. And whatever it is, replace phone with some other object. If it's disruptive, then it needs to be removed.
Okay, so I want to read you briefly a couple of different scenarios for phone bans that have been implemented at schools near me. And then we can talk about what the ideal way is to remove the phones. And I think what I feel about this is that there's stages. Like the school's going to try the most loose, and then the next year they're probably going to have to tighten it up and tighten it up. And so it's just a multi-year process that we're all going to end up getting to the best way to do it, which is what you guys, I think, have laid out in your Phone Free Schools Movement toolkit. Okay, so this specific one at a local school, this phone ban, stating that electronics brought from home are prohibited during school hours. Please remind students that these devices may be worn, but if they are misused, then they are to be kept in their backpacks and not to be used inside the gates during the school day. Electronic watches are included in this policy. It is up to the teacher's discretion to decide if devices are asked to remain in the backpacks during school hours or collected at the start of class and then be distributed at the end of class. What do you feel about just that snippet?
Well, it's unfortunate because it's putting the onus first on the student with the undeveloped brain, right? Expecting a student with this fun gadget on their wrist that they will have the self-control that they haven't developed.
Right.
And then second, it's again putting it on the teachers to police and taking away from important instructional time and creating that negative relationship by taking it away.
Yeah. I don't understand how you can expect a kid to be able to wear a watch that they can use to play games and communicate with other students and their parents and then not use it. That doesn't make any sense to me. And my feeling is maybe schools are just afraid of parents' reaction if they actually require them to not wear the devices that the parents are so reliant on to track their kids.
Nikki, I think you're exactly right. When we talk to administrators, we spent a year talking to administrators from across the nation. Those that didn't have all-day phone policies said the reason was parent pushback. They feared parent pushback. But schools that had effective all-day phone-free policies said they got very little parent pushback and honestly received the opposite, a lot of parent support. So there's this fear, and I think it's unfounded. We do see there's a vocal minority that want 24/7 access to their kids, but the majority of parents understand at a minimum the distraction and disruption it creates in the classroom.
Yeah. You guys at Phone Free Schools Movement, and I'll link to the toolkit, but you guys have laid out the research so clearly that even that vocal minority, I feel like if they were to just review that or had it presented to them, there's not much they can say in response. You can't really argue that having the device on them for your comfort level outweighs all of the negative effects that you guys have outlined.
You would think, but when somebody is really emotional, they can't calm down and see rationally. So it's hard to argue with those folks. And my advice is not to try to argue with them. Instead, find the other 90% that do understand the research and the benefits of being phone free.
Okay, good. And so alternatively, my school here, they went a little bit stricter with the phone policy. All mobile communication devices, smartphones, smartwatches, smart glasses, gaming devices, headphones, wired or wireless, they need to be turned off and put away while students are at school during school hours. And if a student uses their device in an unauthorized manner, the student will be subject to disciplinary consequences. So the device will be taken away and brought to the office. So not to be seen. Do you feel like that's effective?
I do not, because of addictive algorithms, right? Social media and all of these ways that companies try to engage students, even adults. It's hard for adults to leave their phone down when they see the notification, see it lighting up. So how do we expect students to have that self-control? So we have found that these policies don't work. And again, it puts it on the backs of teachers to police, which is exhausting for them.
Yeah. So through my Teachers Talk series, I've talked to dozens of teachers now and principals and school administrators. And these policies, they don't work. And I'm hopeful that the schools in these individual situations, and they'll figure it out over the years and realize that. But I feel like we're just delaying the inevitable of something that we already know how it works, and we know how to keep it out of their hands. And so, what have you guys discovered as the ideal way to keep the devices out of the kids' hands and keep them focused at school?
I agree with everything you just said. First of all,
Thanks.
our middle schools in our district just went with a locker policy where the students are supposed to leave their phones in their lockers.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen that not work as well because students ask to leave class to use the restroom and they stop by their locker and retrieve their phone. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't eliminate the harms, the potential harms and disruptions. Also, if they have access between classes, they're not getting a break from it. And all those disruptions can still happen, whether it be cyberbullying, like you mentioned, or planning fights, or videoing other students or staff without their knowledge and posting that to social media. So it doesn't remove those temptations at all. So our best practice definition is a phone-free policy that's from first bell to last bell. So it's all day, and the phone must be locked away in some sort of storage device. Now, there's variations in that. There's the Yonder pouch, there's locked phone lockers. If a school needs something that's more affordable, there are ways to do that as well, whether it's just a labeled pencil pouch with the phone in it, and then those are in alphabetical order in baskets and stored locked away. That is a simple solution that would work just as well.
Okay. So it's about removing it from their person, holding it out of their reach. I assume it's important to have it off or in airplane mode as well.
Yes, we recommend, no matter the method, that the phone is turned off prior to be
Okay.
putting in the pouch or in the phone case.
Okay. Because ideally, the smartwatch also would go in the case, but if it doesn't, the kid can still get their messages on their watch.
Right. And if their AirPods aren't locked up as well, they can still listen to a podcast or music or what have you, even though their phone is stored in another location. So that's why we recommend all electronic devices be stored away.
And what about enforcement and consequences? How do schools ensure that kids actually follow these rules instead of just sneaking it in past the pouch process?
Right. So we've learned from schools that have these effective policies that you have to have strict consequences, that you can't just keep reminding them, remember you need to put that away, or remember you need to put it in the pouch, or whatever. You have to have strict consequences. So if the phone is seen out, then it has to be taken away for the day. The structure of consequences that we recommend is the first offense, the phone goes to the office and the student can pick it up at the end of the day. The second offense, the phone goes to the office and a parent has to pick it up at the end of the day. And the third offense is, again, phone taken away, but a meeting is set with the parent to discuss what the future plan is, since it's been a struggle. Some schools go as far as to charge a fee for the students to get their phone back. Some do detention. I've even heard some opportunities where schools turn it into community service, or, cleaning the lunchroom tables or something. So students understand that this is the rule and we're not going to break it. If you just give reminders, it doesn't encourage them. If all teachers don't enforce the policy, then students will push back. If some teachers do and some don't, then it's in their nature. That's what kids do, right? They push back. But when it's 100% of the staff is on board and enforcing it, then the problem goes away.
Okay. Yeah. When I think about social media harms, which is what I sort of focus on the podcast, and we talk about monitoring, restricting, and delaying, but really the most important thing is educating your child, educating your teenager on what the harms are and why we're restricting or why we're monitoring or delaying. And so I think that's also important when schools are trying to enforce a more strict phone policy, bell to bell, educating the students and the parents on why. And I think that's an opportunity that is missed a lot of times. I did see a cute video on Instagram of a school that did a little play. Did you see this where
I
some of the
did.
teachers, yeah, I'll have to clip it in, but some of the
Yeah.
teachers were pretending they were students and being like, well, why do we have to give our phone away? Or, it was so cute. And they
Mm-hmm.
were actually working in the reasons why in this cute video that they could show to parents and students and have it be relatable. I think that from what I can tell, schools are hesitant to do too much regarding this because the parent pushback, they don't want to highlight it more than needed because they're going to get more pushback from those vocal parents. And then also they don't want liability. I have a hard time understanding why, for example, our district, my district, this phone policy that we have that's stricter is brand new. And they didn't introduce it to the parents until 2 days before school started. And it's just kind of subtly mentioned. The reasons are there. I pled with them at a district meeting, like, give everybody this research that shows that schools that implement these phone policies have kids that are more focused and they do better on their tests and they, engage more. That's not what I'm seeing. So what do you feel about this? Like, really the school taking ownership of educating the parents on the reasons why, and then also communicating that to students.
I agree. Communication is key, and it's number one. In our Phone Free Schools Administrator Toolkit, we
Yeah.
recommend 2 months prior to implementing the policy in this planning phase, you're hosting informational meetings for each stakeholder. So whether that be the teachers and staff or the parents or the students, and you host that meeting in order to do a few things. Number one, administrators need to be transparent about the problems that phones are causing in schools. So parents might think it's not a big deal if I'm texting Joey to see what he wants for dinner, because that's just one little message, but they're not realizing, oh, no, Joey is getting 200 messages during the day and responding to them. So giving parents the bigger picture of what's happening is key. And then, like you said, the research is very clear. It's really important that administrators share the research. Another great tool to utilize is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I mean, that book outlines all of the research and it's very clear and it has really taken off and it has caused this groundswell of schools moving toward these phone policies. So it's a great way to encourage all the stakeholders to dive in and understand the research. I know districts where they've given that book to their entire staff. In my district, a board member bought it for all of the other school board members and the superintendent. We hosted a parent book discussion, right? So PTAs and parent organizations could host book discussions on the anxious generation. And that is really a easy way to bring people along who don't know the research if they dive into that book. So those informational meetings serve as not only providing the research, but also giving parents an opportunity to ask questions. And in our toolkit, we have provided an entire section on FAQs, the common questions that all parents have. That helps them get comfortable with the policy. Popping it on them the day or two before school starts isn't the best way to get a positive reaction. Giving them time to adjust and ask the questions that they have and express their concerns is really beneficial to bring them on board.
Yeah. And also I heard there too, training the teachers on why. And that's really lacking. At our back to school night last week, the teachers in their presentations included a slide on the phone policy and they went into it very hesitantly, really a lack of confidence and expecting some negative reactions. And I started clapping. I was like, yay, we're so happy about this. And then other people clapped and I was like, see, like, I just felt so bad for the teacher because she was scared to introduce this to parents in that moment. And that shouldn't be the case. They should have the confidence and the information and the research to support the decision.
I would say if they had an administrator that had approached the parents with the policy first, right? Be the first lines of communication and have that backing, and it would be easier for the teacher as well. And also we have provided common pushbacks. There's several common pushbacks. So we have a document in the toolkit that gives research-based answers that a principal can share with his entire staff, because if they're getting questions from parents at parent-teacher conference or via email, if they have these common pushbacks with the answers, then they are all on the same page and aren't telling parents different scenarios. It helps unify the message and tie it all back to research.
Yeah. And some of this research is incredible. I'm just going to read a couple of things. Like 97% of students use phones during school for an average of 43 minutes a day, spent primarily on social media, YouTube, and gaming. 83% of teachers support an all-day phone-free policy. 72% of high school teachers report cell phones are a major distraction in the classroom. And more than half of kids get 237 notifications per day. And some receive as many as 4,500 notifications every day, and a quarter of those occur during school. And most importantly, students not using their phones during class, they retain more information, they write down more information, they score a full letter grade and a half higher on multiple choice tests. Rates of loneliness improve without the phones at school. I feel like there's even more than what you have here, but I mean, more than can fit on one page or 2 pages here. But I just think it's so important to understand this research and understand the why. One thing that I ran into that I wonder if you've heard from other states. So when I spoke with my school board about the phone ban, I was recommending through your guys' toolkit that we use Yonder pouches to lock them up in magnetic pouches. I was told during that meeting that there is a law in California that doesn't allow us to take the phones off of them or have them not get access to their phones in certain situations. So I looked that up, and I have the law, and it was signed by Gavin Newsom here in California in 2019. And it states that a pupil shall not be prohibited from possessing or using their smartphone under the following circumstances: in the case of an emergency or in response to a perceived threat of danger, when the teacher lets them, basically, or when a licensed physician or surgeon determines they need to use it, or when it's needed for education. But I think the first one being in case of emergency, but it's basically telling us, and the district interpreted it as, you have to let them possess it or be able to use it in case of an emergency. And if it is locked up in the office, we can't abide by that law. Has that something you've heard of before?
Interesting. No, I haven't. I was familiar. I don't know if is that all the verbiage? Because I thought in 2019, California passed a law that allowed schools to create phone policies, that they could have a phone-free policy.
This was at the bottom of that update. So it was, yes, recommending phone-free policies or stricter phone bans, but this is also included. So I can understand why my school district would interpret that as, we have to let them have it on their person.
Well, in a Yonder pouch, they do, right? They can carry it in their backpack. I think best practice is it's off the person and in the locker, even in a Yonder pouch. But Yonder pouches do allow you, since it's locked, it's in your bag. And so they can possess it. I guess that's one direction you could go with that. And I do know lots of schools in California that do utilize Yonder. So they've achieved it.
Okay, good to know.
Yes, we'll have to provide you with a list so you can go back to the next school board meeting and share that list.
Yes, yeah, I will email that directly to our tech guy and say, can you please contact these schools who've been able to successfully enact a bell-to-bell policy with it where they don't have it on them. And then continual assessment. So one of the board members said, we need to meet in a month or two and see how this is working. And I can't wait to hear. Jumping in here to tell you guys a little bit more about the Bark phone. If you want to protect your child at home and during the school day, an iPhone is not going to do it. The Bark phone starter plan comes with talk and text only. If and when you're ready to start integrating other apps and potentially social media, there are advanced plans available that let kids start easing into these areas of their device, but not without your approval. Plus, it has advanced content monitoring, which will send you alerts of potential dangers. But when it comes to a basic phone that won't addict or distract your child from healthier activities or school, the Bark phone is where it's at. But if your child already has an iPhone or an Android and you don't want to switch it up, please layer on the Bark parental controls as a baseline. You can set screen time rules, block certain apps and websites, get alerts, and a ton more helpful options for parents. Let's get back to my chat with Kim.
That research has shown there is a secondhand smoke effect with phones.
Right.
Because even if you don't have your phone out, but the student next to you does, your test scores go down. So it's not an individual decision anymore. It's really a collective that we need to protect the environment for all kids. I can choose not to send or allow my child to take a phone, but they're still being impacted because those around them have phones, negatively impacted.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons why we're looking at a Waldorf school, to be honest with you, because I just don't know how far we're going to get, how quickly with phone policies in our school. And I'm grateful to organizations like yours for helping to make it easier for schools to figure out how to do this.
Nobody has to reinvent the wheel, right? We've
Right.
talked to so many schools who've done this right, and we've collected all of that into a roadmap, a comprehensive guide. School administrators, they have so much on their plate. They shouldn't have to recreate this. So hopefully they can download our toolkit and utilize it.
I hope so too. And I'm going to include that in the episode notes. I want to just very briefly touch on school issued devices. So, what is your current thoughts around our use, how kids are using school issued devices in the classroom at this point in time?
Well, I will answer that question based on my experience and my children's experience. My youngest was in kindergarten when my district rolled out the one-to-one, and that was 10 years ago. And they gave every child a device from kindergarten through 12th grade. They took away the printers, the teachers' printers in the classroom, and they told them to use the devices with very little training. So that led to overuse and misuse and iPads with 300 apps. Kids could access 300 apps on those little devices. And so I think the pendulum is swinging and we're realizing, holy cow, we went way too far. This isn't a good thing. I think something that is misperceived by administrators is that engagement equals learning. I know in my experience, the principal was saying how exciting it is to see all these little kindergartners engaged doing this on their iPad, right?
Okay.
But two things there. Engagement doesn't equal learning, right? We can be playing a game and not learn a single thing from it.
Right.
And two, when you're in kindergarten, you should be using crayons and scissors to develop those fine motor skills, right? So it's displacing developmental opportunities that children have. And they reach a point where their hands are fully developed and they don't have those fine motor skills. And so that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So we really need to rethink the one-to-one. At what age is that appropriate? I would argue never in elementary should a school be one-to-one.
Right. And then do high schoolers even need them for every subject? Maybe, maybe not. But our default shouldn't be, yes, tech for every single class and every single grade.
No, our default should be, Nikki, when we can't accomplish it, when tech is the only way it can be transformative to utilize it, right? So that would be very minimal.
Right. And absolutely at the right time. And kindergarten is not the right time. TK is not the right time. Second grade is not the right time. I mean, it's tough because a lot of states require the state testing be done on the devices. And so it's something that if kids are going to test on the device, they need to be somewhat familiar with it. That state testing usually starts in second or third grade. Yeah, this is a tough one and I'm digging into it more, but I appreciate you sharing your experience. And I'm so sorry that happened to be the year that they introduced one-to-one. And I at least though I'm getting clarity on what a solution could be. Definitely cart model rather than one-to-one, where kids only use the device when needed and then they put it back in the cart. It doesn't belong to them. They don't have time to get super familiar with it. They don't bring it home.
I advocate for the computer lab down the hall.
Yeah, I know.
That
feels
ideal.
So far. That feels like such a tough one to accomplish because we're so far from that. So I'm feeling like I can get away with cart model for now, and then if we get there and there's still problems, we can jump to. But I agree.
For sure. And schools are so strapped for funding. think about the money they could save if they just had one set of devices as opposed to every child having a device. I feel like that money could be better used to benefit children.
Yeah, there's the
Buy
Yonder
Yonder.
Pouch
There you
budget,
go. Buy
right?
Yonder. Buy a phone locker.
Yeah. Okay. And then I wonder, you have 2 teenagers, right?
Correct.
But what's it like with their school and their phone policies and all that? How are you handling it?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to back up a little.
Yeah, sure.
I signed the wait until 8th pledge. And when my oldest was in 8th grade, I thought, not ready for a smartphone. So we got a talk text only phone and planned for both of our children to utilize that through high school.
Yeah.
Then when they got to high school, all of the coaches and the band instructor communicate via apps. And that talk text phone had no internet, no apps.
Okay.
So we felt forced to get them a smartphone. That wasn't our choice. And I still regret it and I'm frustrated by it because now I have to monitor it, right? And as you know, it's a full-time job monitoring devices and screens for children. So it's one more for each child, 2 more devices that I have to monitor and have those parental controls set up and make sure that they're being followed and nothing's foolproof, right? There's always ways around it. So it's challenging. So I felt like the school encouraged the need for a smartphone. And they are a sophomore and a junior in high school, and they have the policy just last year. It's not even a policy, Nikki, it's a procedure in the student handbook that phones are not to be utilized during classroom instructional time only. And it's also up to the teacher discretion. So if the teacher sees a purpose for it, then that's fine as well. So that hasn't worked at all, as you can imagine, right? It's, again, the teachers are having to police it, and they might even allow students at the end of class, everybody can have them, right? If you're done with your work, go ahead and you can have your phone, as opposed to reading a book or talking to your neighbor or whatever. I even had a teacher share with me, I was so excited to talk to her because she utilized the shoe holder or the calculator holder in her classroom. And I'm thrilled that when schools don't have a policy, that teachers go to that effort. And she was sharing that the key was day one. You got to have students put their phone in there on day one. And we have a block schedule, so classes are 90 minutes. The way she ran her classroom was as soon as the students come in, they put their phone in, and then at the 45-minute mark, she gives them a 5-minute break where they can have their phone or use the restroom. And at that 5 minutes, they put their phones back in. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's giving them a smoke break. Like they can't even go 90 minutes.
That's what I was thinking.
Our students should be able to go not just 90 minutes, but 7 hours, a full school day, without feeling the pressures of being on social media and checking notifications, where they can just focus on school. So I applaud any teacher that uses that method. I wish it didn't have to fall on them. But we need to think about not just our academic time, but also our social and emotional development and our mental health, right? Anxiety and depression through the roof. You've reported on this a lot. So it's impacting students as a whole.
Yeah. For parents that are listening, what's the easiest first step if you want your school to implement a stricter phone policy?
Gather other parents. It's easiest if you go in mass as opposed to single-handedly. And the more parents you have on board, the better. And you can either send emails to the principal, superintendent, and the school board. You could do a petition if you wanted to gather signatures to get a list of, we have 150 parents that signed this petition saying they want a phone-free school policy in place. And so gather others to help with that effort. That's usually the most effective. So you don't feel as lonely. It's a lonely space to be in, right?
Yes.
And B, the school district can see it's not just that one parent. It's several parents that feel this way. And I also want to acknowledge schools didn't create this problem, right?
No.
Parents are giving their kids phones at younger and younger ages. So we need to do a better job at delay. And also tech companies design these to be addictive.
Capitalized. Right.
Right.
They really
So
capitalized on all of this.
they did. And as you know and have shared, the Kids Online Safety Act passed the Senate, and now it needs to pass in the House. So we all need to be contacting our representatives to encourage them to vote for that.
Yeah, thank you, Kim, for mentioning that. And I have a bunch of interviews lined up this month with legislative experts to just educate parents more on the Kids Online Safety Act and answer some questions that I've received so parents can look out for those interviews. I think it's, I'm not blindly asking parents to support a bill that they know nothing about, despite the fact that it'll save kids' lives and you should support it. But I want to make it as easy as possible to understand what we're signing up for there.
That's great.
Yeah. So, okay. So phonefreeschoolsmovement.org is where parents and administrators and teachers can get access to the phone free toolkit. It's phone free school. What are you guys calling it exactly?
Phone Free Schools Administrator Toolkit. And
Phone Free
Nikki,
Schools Administrator Toolkit. There we go.
So we have the Administrator Toolkit, but we're also in the process of developing an Ambassador Toolkit. So when you asked what parents can do, we're putting together those tools so parents and teachers who want to advocate for phone free schools can have all the tools that they need in one place.
Amazing. Yeah. And that was one thing that I developed using your guys' resources that you have so far, but also adding some other things into it was the speech that I gave at the board meeting about why I, as a parent, support phone-free schools.
Other than joining our movement on our website, they can also become ambassadors. So if you want to advocate in your region, you can sign up to be an ambassador. And we host a monthly call to provide those folks with the tools they need and the resources they need to advocate in their area for phone-free schools.
Awesome. Kim, thank you so much for doing this on behalf of parents and schools everywhere and children. This is something that I'm so passionate about. And I was really grateful to see your website come to life and be like, oh my gosh, this is everything that I was thinking and needed organized for me. And I think parents everywhere are grateful. And it's making a big difference. And big time advocates in the space like Jonathan Haidt are calling you guys out and working with you. And it just fits so nicely. I think the timing is perfect for having a solution that you guys are offering to everybody. So thank you so much, Kim, for everything you do.
Thank you, Nikki. And thank you for your amazing podcast. It's moving the needle as well.
Thank you, Kim.